All right, there we go. We totally haven't been embarrassing ourselves on Roanoke's end of things
No.
for the last 5 minutes. Everything's fine.
I'm amazed we ever get recurring guests with how badly
yeah.
we set things up every time.
The
but
incredible part is that we have not improved.
Yep.
It's been 3 years and we have not improved.
We can do this,
What did you do?
but we haven't improved.
Oh, yeah, that. There's an applause button, too, right?
Oh, yeah, there is.
I can't hear it.
Sick.
Oh, well, he can.
He can hear it.
I can hear it.
Woo!
Amazing.
Good. All right. Anyway, well, I'm psyched because we've been wanting to have you back for a while. They're like I'm sure that almost all of our audience.
An audience?
Sure, most of they're all wearing NVGs.
What?
Audience nods.
What are NB?
Night vision goggles.
Oh, God.
Catch up.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying, man.
Yeah, so do you want for those of our viewers who may not know who you are, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. So I run currently 2 channels. One is Roanoke Gaming, which has almost absolutely nothing to do with gaming as of late. It's basically a science-based channel. We talk about parasitology, virology, bacteriology, genetics, all the good things.
All the
And then I
fun
have
stuff.
a channel called Roanoke Tales, where I specifically talk about like cryptids. And currently I've been doing a lot of stuff on like missing people and like cases that gone cold, just kind of whatever I think kind of sounds interesting to me. I
Might
just
know
start,
a thing or two about this.
yeah.
If you come across anything we've covered and you have questions or want notes, like feel free to let me know. I will happily send you everything I've got on it. You'll have to figure out how to read my handwriting, but aside from that, I'm happy to share.
Don't tempt me with a good time, man. I might take all your notes.
Well, so I mean, I don't know about you, but in my opinion, when it comes to stuff like that, especially the like genuinely cold cases, the cops have no idea. They're not going to figure it out. I see no reason to keep that stuff, in house. Like I don't know, for me at least, it's very much like part of the reason we do these is because they're interesting and people should learn about interesting stuff, but also because, maybe we'll come across something that moves the needle a little bit. And that's only going to be more likely the more we share this and the more we have conversations and talk about it. We had Tony Wright on, who wrote a book on the Yuba County 5 just a couple weeks ago. And there was a point in the conversation where both of us were like, wait a second, I wonder about this. And like introduced a whole new thing that we hadn't talked about in the past. So I think that when it comes to the missing persons cases, like if people want me to share my stuff once our video on it is out, then I am more than happy to do so.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, dude. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Let me, if you come across anything, whether it's Tom Messick, Charles McCuller, any of that stuff, let me know and I'm happy to share.
Hell yeah. Appreciate you, brother.
Especially considering that they're like some of these disappearances are, I know you've been talking about like going on in 2027, going to hunt the dog man up in Michigan.
Yeah.
Like
gonna die for sure.
Yeah. But that kind of thing, like there are cases where people have gone missing and somebody has said, no, it was the dog man. I saw him, like I'm sure of it.
Well, what I find, I don't want to interrupt.
No, continue.
Yeah, the whole dogman thing. Okay, so one of the weird things I do find with that specifically is this thing is supposed to be an animal, and one guy literally said he shot it with his God, what was it? Colt 45?
Okay, interesting choice.
That's a beer.
No, well, yeah, Colt 45
remember.
is a malt liquor, but it might have been a 1911 if he was saying a Colt 45.
He was a trucker basically, and he said he shot it in the eye, and it's like then it rolled off down the hill, and yet when he got back, apparently somebody in a suit stopped him, and it was just this whole like ridiculous thing. Or they showed up at his house later. I don't know, man. I'm pretty sure if you shoot an animal in the eye, it's pretty much going to be done. So the supernatural aspect with a dog man, again, says I'm going to die when I go hunt that thing.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're like, on the off chance this is real, I'm screwed. Like if I ever run into this thing, I am done. It's over. There's no coming back. But I mean,
it's just pretty much game over.
what I think is really interesting about the Dogman one specifically, though, is first of all how regionally isolated it is compared to something like Bigfoot, where you get Bigfoot stories that are you get the skunk ape in Florida, you get the Saskets in British Columbia, you get the wood ape in parts of the Pacific Northwest, like all these different variations of quote unquote Bigfoot all over the country. And then the Dogman stuff, the idea of like a half dog, half human seems to be pretty isolated to like the northern forests of the American Midwest and then certain parts of Canada.
Yeah. And I mean, it kind of seems like it also falls in line with, I'm not specifically sure where black bear's territory, or not black bears, but brown bear territory is.
Mhm.
But it kind of seems like to me, does Europe have bears? I
Uh,
cannot remember if they do or not.
they have fewer than they used to, but they used to have a lot of bears.
Okay,
There's
so one
actually
of the
there's a
things
number of
that's
the Mansi people of the Ural Mountains. This is like the
Mhm.
Dyatlov Pass area. Uh, Part of the reason that people said that there was like a Yeti connection to the Dyatlov Pass thing was this Mansi story called about the mink, and it's their
Yeah.
version of like Bigfoot or the Yeti. It's kind of similar to the Christian concept of Nephilim, in that these are like spiritual beings that live in another plane. Like it's got some interesting connections that you're like, okay, how much of this is like traditional oral narrative, how much of this came over with Christianity. But within their stories, they have like this bear cult where you're supposed to go and you worship the bear and you ceremonially kill the bear, and it's like a spiritual powerhouse for them. So
Yeah.
there's bear iconography and mythology all over Europe that's pretty intense.
I was gonna say, I know specifically with the werewolves. What is it over in England?
Mhm.
That's kind of where the idea came from originally, and then it came over into the U.S. And then when, like, the English showed up
Yeah.
on the Eastern Coast, which then became Americans, yada yada yada. The interaction of the cultures there kind of started shifting specifically that
Mhm.
area. What was it like? Skinwalkers and Wendigos into becoming like werewolves.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that it does take place specifically in that area,
Mhm.
but again, as you just said, what's kind of more strange is the fact that Bigfoot is everywhere across the US.
Yeah.
So
It's
could it exist though? I don't know.
well, that's I wanted to, since we got you, I wanted to talk about that because we've been going through a Bigfoot series that we've slowed down because I think we were overdoing the Bigfoot for some people. But we've been going through the series, and one thing that I've consistently come up against is like, all right, say these things are as big as people are saying, 8, 9. Some of the modern like Bigfooters even say 10 feet tall.
Yeah.
Most of the Native American stories max out at like 8 feet. But some of these modern Bigfooters, they'll, say, like, I saw a 10-foot squatch. It took my uncle. Stuff like that, And looking at, how much a guy my size, I'm 5'9", if I were that active, I would need to eat a lot of calories.
Yeah.
And I eat meat, I eat, dairy. I have a pretty balanced diet. At a height of 7 to 8 feet, what kind of calories is a person going to need? Like, is that possible in your opinion?
So it really depends, I suppose, because if you take something like, so I'm 5'8", 175. I think my BMR
Mhm.
specifically for how active I am is around like 2,800 calories.
Right.
So take something maybe double my size. That means 2,800. Just because it's double my size, it could be triple my weight. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So that takes even more energy than what you're going to normally get. So this thing would, I mean, I think the best thing that it could probably be put at is it would need 8 to 10,000 calories
A
if it's three
day?
times the weight. Yeah, and on top of that, you're talking about, okay, well, let's say it's eating a bunch of plants, right? Gorilla, gorillas are kind of a good example. They
Yeah.
are gigantic. They're not really like much taller than humans. In fact, they're usually a little
Yeah.
shorter than humans. Like even if they're like if they're standing, they might be a little taller, but they're just kind of walking on all fours. They're not as tall.
Mhm.
But they're like what 400 pounds,
I
something
think
like that,
so.
and they're constantly eating because they have to fuel themselves. But
Yeah.
they're also going to be in an environment that's going to have a lot of food with it.
Right.
Um, North America, it's got a lot of trees and there's a lot of grass and there's a lot of like things that it can eat, but specifically the amount of plant material it's going to have to eat
Mhm.
is going to be a lot. So, how do you circumnavigate that? Well, it would be like us.
Yeah.
It would eat meat and it would eat plants at the same time. So, that would be a good way to kind of do that. And it can even do something like what cats have, which is essentially like a primordial pouch. So like
Mhm.
they basically overeat, and that
Okay.
allows their basically stomachs to expand into that pouch so that they can eat more than what would be considered like normal for any other animal to eat. So they can work on that as they go. So yeah, it's gonna need a lot of calories to eat, and that's kind of one of the biggest things I have. Like you would have to compare it to there was an ape that existed like a long time ago. Gigantopithecus, I think it was.
Over in Asia.
Yeah, big, like I think that was like 10 to 12 feet.
Yeah,
10 to 12 feet tall. Absolutely horrifying to run into one of those things. That's what I think Bigfoot would be based on, simply because of the size of the creature that they're talking about.
Right.
But even then, I mean, it's like that thing was eating all the time. And in fact, because of its environment, they hypothesized that, or as I've learned a term recently, what is it? Scientific wild ass guess. They take a swag at it.
Scientific wild ass guess. I love that.
Yeah. So they take a swag at it. And they're like, okay, probably because of its environment, it was able to exist within this environment because there was enough nutrition. However, the problem is that as the climate started to shift even just a little bit, it put it in a bind, and then it was just flatlined because it didn't have enough.
Yeah. So in order for there to be something that's like along those lines, 10 feet tall and humanoid, it's got to be carnivorous, right? First of all, like there's no
it's got to eat some
it.
sort of meat. Yeah, it's gonna have to eat some sort of meat. And also, one of the things is Bigfoot is bipedal, right? Yeah. And as far as we know, that we've seen, we're the only primate that's bipedal fully. So one of the interesting things about an ape becoming bipedal is it would probably do something similar that it did to us, which the reason apes can never be as intelligent as humans, even though, Planet of the Apes might have you believe differently, is when you're, let's say like this is your head, right? So when you're like this, the bones are supporting the weight of your head, but when you're like this, the muscle is supporting the weight of the head.
Right.
So because the muscle's supporting it, the connection points actually on the skull have to be a lot more robust, which means they have to connect into the skull or onto the skull much more heavily, which means that's going to indent and then take up area where the brain could be.
Okay.
So they'll never be as intelligent. So basically Bigfoot does exist, and that means he's become bipedal, which means his spine is now supporting his head, which means he could be more intelligent.
Yeah, and that definitely gets a little bit more into where I wanted to go with this. I had further questions, but I did want to ask really quick, because this is something that my entire life I've been under the impression that brain size is secondary to how wrinkly the brain is. Is that a myth, or is that like is it a combination of the factors? There's of course the joke of being smooth brained, which Archie, my dog, very much is.
So the brain folds themselves are going to increase surface area, right? And that's actually going to help basically you form, like, pack in more neurons, more connections. And that's good up to a certain point. In fact, what is it? Einstein, I forget specifically where on his parietal lobe it was, but he had an extra fold.
Okay.
And that's where they're kind of hypothesized. That's why he was so intelligent. Just one extra fold, where normal people had 3, he had 4.
Got it.
Did they do? So was that in like the autopsy of him that they found that out?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, they have his brain right now. It's on. I'm pretty sure Einstein's brain's on display. So when he dropped, they checked all of that and looked at it because they wanted to know why he was so intelligent.
Yeah.
And his brain was actually smaller than average. So it definitely, but therein lies the issue, right? To a certain degree, you can have a smaller brain, yet you can be more intelligent.
Because you can have more surface area because more wrinkles.
Exactly. Neanderthals actually had a larger brain than Homo sapiens did. And Neanderthal was not stupid by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
But, humans were more social, so we bred them out, kind of.
So this creates the terrifying prospect of Bigfoot not only having a larger brain, but also a more wrinkly brain.
Yeah. Also, that
horrifying.
Yeah, that creates a mildly upsetting sense of reality for introverts, realizing that the extroverted element of humanity is what allowed us to, be successful and become smarter and dominate the world.
I didn't know that.
Hitting on cave women,
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That's the other fascinating one is I see a lot of people that talk about Bigfoot and they're like, maybe it's the Neanderthals that they never died off. They never totally died off. Maybe some of them survived in North America and became Bigfoot. And I think what a lot of people don't quite understand is that Neanderthals were small by comparison to us. Like they were not particularly tall.
They were stockier for sure.
Yeah, they were robust, but
I know they're like in the genetic testings that people can take, like 23andMe and stuff like that. that there is existing Neanderthal DNA in certain people. Do we know what like the upper limit is in Homo sapiens of Neanderthal DNA? Is it Neanderthal or Neanderthal?
Neanderthal.
You can say it either way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I grew up
anybody who
saying
says you
thal.
can't. Yeah.
It's technically it was the original word is German, so Neanderthal is technically the correct pronunciation. But if you say Neanderthal, you're not wrong.
Okay.
Like it's just
you're just a Neanderthal.
If you meet somebody and
I'm
they
short
say,
enough to be one, that's for sure.
What it means is
it happens to the best of us.
If you meet somebody and they say Neanderthal, it means they're probably educated somewhere in the field of anthropology, and that's about it.
Got it.
Or they watched a documentary and they want to sound smarter than they actually are.
Fair enough.
Those are the two options.
Yeah.
I fall into the
Those are
latter
the only
category.
two options.
There's no other options. Utterly
it
impossible.
cannot be explained otherwise.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's how most things are. It has to be one way or the other. Nuance doesn't exist.
No. And this is the internet. There's no such thing.
Exactly. No, absolutely not. I mean, you guys doing the flat Earth?
Oh yeah.
Studies or stuff recently.
Don't get us started on that.
Nobody considered Velociraptor Earth. Nobody considered thick Earth.
Didn't you know that Thomas Aquinas is not an authority on the Bible?
Oh my God, that was that one hurt me. That caused me physical pain. That guy finally emailed us, by the way.
Oh yeah.
He kept streaming and complaining that I was running away from a debate, and I commented every time saying you need to email me to set it up. I'm not doing this in your comment section.
Yeah.
And finally he emailed us today, so
nice.
Looking forward to that. Anyway, back to the discussion. I'm curious to get your take on something else. Maybe you don't. Maybe you haven't seen it or haven't considered it that much. But have you seen the Patterson-Gimlin film?
I have not.
It's that famous Bigfoot one from the 60s or the early 70s.
It's the one where that screen grab of the Bigfoot picture that I'm sure you've seen in everywhere.
Patty.
That's where that comes from. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've seen The Dark Knight, you've seen that picture.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Knight.
Yeah, and early opening
scene
when Gordon's up on the roof and Detective Ramirez is coming out to greet him, somebody throws a crumpled up piece of paper at a board of current Batman suspects, and it's Bigfoot. It's that picture of Bigfoot. I think there's a picture of, oh God, what's the Union guy that went missing? Jimmy Hoffa. I think, and there's a Loch Ness Monster, a couple other things up there, but yeah. The things that my brain remembers, I can't remember to tell anybody anything about any important information.
Oh, of course, no.
But I can remember that random shot from a movie 12 years ago.
Yeah, it's...
Everybody's wondering how I have not seen this movie yet. I don't know, guys.
So to be fair, it's not a movie. It's I think the total thing is 300 seconds long.
Yeah.
It's
talking about this guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Here's the thing. Travel Channel. Back when I was 8 years old. I don't even think it was definitely Discovery Channel back then.
Probably.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay. Yeah. Just out of curiosity, is there anything that comes to mind when you look at that picture? That any thoughts?
Dude in a suit.
Okay.
So the problem.
Take us through your reasoning.
I don't know. Okay. So here's the thing. Again, it goes back to humans being bipedal versus apes being semi-bipedal.
Right.
What kind of the changes that have to happen in the body for that to exist? You're talking about the angle of the hips being different, how the femurs actually connect to the hips, because ours have to kind of go inwards over the knee to make us bipedal. Apes don't really have that. They have wider hips at a much different angle than we have. Their rib cages are different. Their spines are different. Basically, everything that when I look at that picture, you can kind of just see based on how it's walking, how the legs connect to the actual hip. And I'm not trying to talk out of my ass or anything.
No, I got you.
But it's it looks like a guy in a suit, because these are all very human proportions, and not, even the arms aren't as long as they should be, for an ape. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, so evolutionarily speaking, why is this thing out here? What is it eating? As we discussed, if it's 10 feet tall,
right?
How have we not run across it more? And what would be the purpose of it being bipedal? right? So if you look at humanity, why are we bipedal? Well, again, I like to maintain nobody truly knows where we came from. It could be evolution, could be life started completely by accident. It could be creation. But the reality is we'll never know. And I don't think we're going to know until we figure out what happens after death. But the point is that with humans, according to theory of evolution, the reason that we stood up is to look over grasses. All right. And basically look out for predators. We came down from the trees, shifting climate, looking over grass caused us to stand up more often. Eventually, okay, well, now that I'm moving through this grass more often, I'm going to keep standing. And then when I get on the other side of it, I'm going to go back to walking in, four-limbed kind of form of locomotion. Why would this, like, as far as the United States is concerned, even if you took it over into like the Great Plains, right? The grasses there aren't really tall enough that it's going to have to be looking over to try to see a predator. You're talking about being in forests. So if it's an arboreal type of thing, why is it walking upright? What would be the purpose? Why are its arms not very long? This thing looks really heavy for being bipedal. It looks really heavy to be trying to swing through trees. It's just nothing about its actual existence would really make sense.
So then whatever it is, if this were to be something that's real, would you say it would have to have diverged from hominids specifically?
Yeah, so it would have to come from basically us.
Yeah.
It would have to come from Homo erectus, possibly specifically because Homo erectus was very hairy in comparison. But Homo erectus, coming out of Africa and then migrating north into Europe, Homo erectus then became Neanderthalensis. And then the second wave, basically that was still back in Africa, became sapiens, and then they moved up.
Okay.
So
can you take us through, because it's been a long time for me, can you take us through from, we have Australopithecus in the generally accepted evolutionary timeline of humanity. Not, again, going with what you said, there is a difference in opinions here, but
exactly.
Just to go with the evolutionary version, the currently accepted model, it starts with Australopithecus, and then where do we go from there?
So Australopithecus is basically, it appears to be the group that was like looking over the grass, right? Trying to look where the predators were coming from. We were getting picked up by birds back then, and every animal was eating us. It really sucked. So until we threw a rock, and then we're like, oh, wait a minute.
Right.
We could do this. So once that happened, it was game over.
Perfect.
Yep.
Exactly.
100%.
So
just out of curiosity, could we also give the timelines for these as well?
I think this is 2 million years.
2 million?
Yeah, 2 million years ago was Australopithecus. And then you have basically from Australopithecus to, we'll just jump over to Erectus. Erectus was... like, this is like a general time range. It's been a while since I've looked at where Australopithecus, somebody says around 7.5 million years ago for Australopithecus. I think Lucy was 2 million years ago. But again, the math could be wrong.
I haven't taken an anthropology course since freshman year of college. So
there you go. Yeah. I look around all this stuff. But so basically going from Australopithecus to Homo erectus, you had a lot of different offshoots that happened, but they all pretty much went extinct. And some of them were like pygmy variants, which were very, very small. I think there's one over, they found like a skeleton over in Australia.
Yeah.
And then you had like larger ones, right? But at some point, I think it was Homo heidelbergensis. I think that became erectus, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So then from erectus, something about that time frame, we weren't just eating plants, we were eating meat as well, which this is why with Bigfoot, it would seem like, okay, well, this is why he has to eat meat, because the amount of protein that was required to grow our brains required meat. Yeah, and at first it was like bone marrow.
Right. Go on. I was going to say most primates are omnivorous, but lean towards vegetation, right?
Right. And I mean, difference? Most animals are opportunistic. Like, I mean, even horses will eat chickens if they get too close.
Really?
So it's like, yeah.
I didn't know they had I didn't know they had the capacity to digest meat.
I don't know if they do or not, but they'll eat them. So
fair,
it's just
fair.
like,
so the horses are just being violent for the sake of violence. Got it.
That's basically what horses do, right?
Trained them that way in the Middle Ages, and they never quite got past
Heidelbergensis is after erectus. Okay. So I've got my my basically lineage of the humanity, but this is basically what we do know, or we think we know anyways. Erectus migrated out of Africa. They were the first kind of, I guess, oh, well, let's get out of here. We're going to go north. They ended up in Europe, kept evolving, became Homo neanderthalensis. And after that kind of separated, enough time passed where it was like a completely separate, well, it was a separate species, right? But it wasn't a separate genus.
Right.
So then Homo sapiens evolved from Homo erectus and was still down there evolving, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually they came up and ran into Homo neanderthalensis. So we'll stop there and be like, okay, that's pretty much how human history went. But then you have to come to like an idea of, okay, well, this thing, Bigfoot, if it's in North America, how did it get there? What did it use to get there? How would it know to build it? Because while there was very, very simplistic, like talking like rocks being broken and then used to like get into things, it was very simplistic tools. Humans, like Homo sapiens, are the ones who made the boats. I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything about Neanderthal making boats. Could be, could not be.
Yeah,
I just don't know.
Doesn't sound like anything I would recall.
Yeah. And even then, like if you look at basically how they hypothesized that the Native Americans got into North and South America was some Homo erectus, or not Homo erectus, this would be sapiens at this point, branched off to the right. And they went toward, well, if you're looking down on Earth, right? They went off towards Asia. And when they went off towards Asia, they started island hopping and building boats, getting pretty good at it. And then eventually they were able to make their way, more than likely following the, like going from Siberia, where Russia is very, very close to Alaska, and then following it down the coast. So Erectus at this time was not going to be anything that was even going to be around. So how could that really happen?
Right.
It wouldn't. And why would it be so big? Right?
That's where the question really is, isn't it? Is like what purpose
like 4
is
feet to 10?
Yeah. The one thing I've wondered is, is this, I guess, would it be possible this is something that came over like, early Neanderthal period? Could this be something that we're talking about, like the Denisovans gets over into North America during a time when there is a more oxygen-rich environment, when it is when we're seeing megafauna like mammoths and I think there's giant rhinoceroses were a thing
and
too.
like giant beavers and
ground
stuff.
sloths. At a time like that, it would make sense that you would have larger primates, right? But all of that stuff died off. So why would that not die off as well, I guess, would be the other question.
Plus, a lot of the locations in which people supposedly see these are up in the mountains where oxygen levels are already lower than anywhere else on Earth. So it would be odd for something that is that large. I mean, you can make the argument that like bears exist up there, but specifically of a primate, type of biology would be unusual.
Yeah. Also, just because it's another thing where like I remember this from 7th grade biology, but when you said earlier they're the same genus, different species. What I remember from middle and high school biology was interspecies cannot produce fertile offspring, but we know that humans and Neanderthals mated. So is there some wiggle room to that rule? Is that not really a rule? Like, how does interspecies mating work, I guess?
Uh-oh, you froze.
Oh, you're back. Are we back?
Oh, you're back? Okay, good. Yeah, you're good. Okay, so basically your question was species mating to create. There are examples of interspecies, like close enough in the interspecies to basically create viable offspring.
Right.
Most of them are going to be sterile, but God, it's escaping me. I know that it can be possible to create, and it really comes back to, I think, our own classification system.
Right.
How far are the species really distantly related in our classifications? So if you take something like, I don't know, I mean, humans and Neanderthal, right? Obviously different species, but we were able to reproduce and still create viable young that could go on to reproduce, so that genes from Neanderthal were passed down. It kind of seems like then that would it really be designated as a different species? It's difficult to say, but like I said, there is definitely is I'm gonna have to look it up now because it's bugging the crap out of me.
Yeah, because that was gonna be.
I know the liger is definitely. I don't think the liger can reproduce,
and I know mules can't.
Yeah. That was going to be my follow-up question, was like, in terms of the genotypical delineations between species, you know, is it number of chromosomes, or is it like the specific pairings of certain ones? Because I know, you know, individual to individual, we all have the same number of chromosomes, you know, generally, but there are, you know, outliers who
mutations.
Yeah, exactly. And then genetics. You know, within that realm of possibility, it's like, you know, how far of a degree of separation do you have to no longer be considered the same species? And then is it I was just going to say the last bit was going to be, is it mainly heavily genotypical, or like are there phenotypical elements that are taken into account as well that may or may not be, you know, more prevalent or less prevalent than the underlying genotypical kind of structure?
Well, I mean, so if you specifically with genetics, if you combine, and this is the best way, I actually explained this in one of the videos recently that I did. If you can get past the first part of reproduction, because essentially a lot of times the sperm from one animal will not have the ability to even fertilize an egg of another animal to begin with. It just doesn't happen. So nothing is viable at the start. Sometimes, if it's close enough, you can get the sperm to actually fertilize the egg, but then you've got the problem of actual differentiation of cells, right? It's a very delicate process that if it's not done, I mean, you look at life in general, and it's like, if it's not done just specifically so, you're screwed. And it's based on, at least with humans, 23 chromosomes from the mother, 23 chromosomes from the father. Those come together, boom, you're good to go. Because each of those are going to have a set of instructions that then link together to read. So it's like reading a book, right? That's how your cells know, okay, well, I'm supposed to be a neuron, or I'm supposed to be a muscular cell, I'm supposed to be a bone cell. Like, all of these things come together to create this book that creates you. When you have essentially not a hybrid animal, well, I mean, even with a hybrid animal, it's like it's written, let's say that like with a hybrid animal, it's written in Old English and Modern English. It's like, okay, well, one animal's writing it in Old English, one animal's writing it in New English. Sometimes as you read along, you can basically be like, okay, I kind of get it. And then it continues in Modern English. You're like, okay, here and here. So I can put together the idea of where this is supposed to go, but then mistakes still happen because you're kind of putting it together.
Yeah.
With animals that are completely different, it's like, okay, this is written in English and this is written in binary.
Okay.
You know, yeah, it just creates gibberish that is, unless you know, and let's say like you can only know one language, right? You either know binary or you know English, and that's it. Then it just becomes gibberish and has no idea. You have no idea what you're supposed to do, and that creates the issue of basically becoming a non-viable animal. So it really does boil down to, when these genes come together, is it a conglomeration of nonsense, or is it just completely like, it's readable, but you're not going to get meiosis properly, because meiosis is a whole like somatic cells undergoing mitosis. That's one thing, but meiosis, where it's recombinant events of genes, completely different ballgame. So you really need to be fine tuned on that. And that's why, like, you know, even putting your laptop on your crotch for too long can sterilize you, and then all your stuff is screwed up.
Oh, good.
So,
didn't know about that one. Glad I used.
Hey, you don't want to do that.
Glad I use my laptop on exclusively wooden surfaces. Well, just really quick, because definitely for the audience's benefit, and not at all for my own, because I know all of the things there are to know. What's meiosis again?
Meiosis is basically when, it's basically creation of sex cells. So sperm and eggs. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So mitosis, like I always like to say, well, I don't always like to say, I actually just came up with this a couple of days ago, just as I was talking, kind of like I do now. Mitosis is like me, like my. So it's like, these are my cells, mitosis. Whereas meiosis, it's the passing of me. You know, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't really work. But
no, I'll take it.
No, I think that's a good thing.
I'm sitting here like, I know what one of those terms means.
Yep. Also, just say always. Never ruin a good story with the truth.
Yeah, no. Just
there you go. Yeah.
Never apologize.
Yeah.
No, especially online.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous thing to do.
Oh my God, it's yeah. They'll take I'm sorry, and they will run with it and make you apologize for everything you've ever done.
I only started watching NCIS recently, but Gibbs's whole rule of don't say you're sorry, it's a sign of weakness is never more true than on the internet.
Oh yeah. Good Lord, man. Okay, so I'm starting to understand the genetics aspect of this a lot better, which is good.
I'm glad one of us is.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
now we're good.
I love that you went for the language example, because linguistics is something that I end up using a lot when it comes to sort of tracing where certain stories have come from, how different groups of people have developed. Of course, and with Native American history especially, linguistics is extremely important, because there's with European history, with a lot of Asian history, even certain portions of Africa, we have significant written documentation going back thousands of years. Native American history, nothing near that. There were a couple of cultures that had written languages. Not much of it survived. But the way that they talk about it a lot is they'll talk about genetic links within families of languages. So it has, linguistics has a similar taxonomy to the actual taxonomy. So I just found that was very interesting. And I do think it seems like maybe the issue is that we don't have the proper terms to differentiate, species versus genus and all that. Maybe it seems like maybe there's a layer in between there that we probably haven't figured out.
Well, so my comment section, they brought something up about wolf dogs.
Sure.
So technically, wolves and dogs are different species, but they're able to produce viable young.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually just looked it up too. So I was like, I just wanted to make sure. But yeah, so you could kind of consider Neanderthal like the wolves and Homo sapiens like dogs, especially because we're more social, which is kind of interesting that we have dogs.
Yeah.
Technically, we could reproduce. So it's kind of I guess that would be like a similar, like what kind of hybrid animal can reproduce? Yeah. Wolves and dogs.
It's such a weird time period in human history too, human anthropology, I guess, because I was looking into this when we were covering a Graham Hancock TV show, and Neanderthals die out almost exactly the same time that Homo sapiens shows up in Europe. It seems like maybe they were already declining, and then they just mixed right into the population of Homo sapiens. But it's like a fascinating window into history where these people disappeared immediately.
Yeah.
and
it only takes one generation.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and you consider what that really means for genetic diversity in history, like how quickly things can just totally be erased, or I guess not erased, but adapted into an entire other species gene pool. What that could mean for something like the origin of these Bigfoot stories, which for me I think goes back probably to either particularly large tribes of people who existed in North America, or possibly there's the Saitiks are supposed to be a tribe that lived on Vancouver Island, who were a little larger, I think 7 feet tall on average, but then they weren't actually hairy. They would wear furs to keep themselves warm, since they lived in the mountains and in caves. And this is something you only get through a few of the stories. It only gets transmitted that way. But that seems to be okay, that makes sense to me, that you could have people who are maybe on average 7 feet tall. That's not an impossible or even unreasonable thing to have. If you look at, I think the Dutch are on average 6'4".
Yeah, they're pretty tall.
Dutch people are huge.
Yeah.
No.
So I went
to. Oh, go on.
No, you were talking.
I went to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I actually just got back from there today because I'm out in DC. One of the guards that they had out there, this guy, legit 7 feet tall. So it can happen. For literally, it's just. I went to school with a guy who was 7'1". It's just some people need to start sharing their height, but unfortunately they keep it all themselves.
So
yeah, they're height hogs.
This is something
exactly.
I learned. I learned this a little over a year ago while we were doing our first series of videos looking at even the possibility of Bigfoot. Do you know how many people there are worldwide who are over the height of 7 foot?
7 foot?
8 people.
Yeah, it's got to be low. I'm gonna guess
hey, maybe not
I'm going to guess 300 max.
It's 2,700 or so.
Wow.
Worldwide, out of nearly 8 billion people, we know of about 2,700 that are over the height of 7 feet. That is, we're talking about like 0.0000001% of people.
But it's crazy the range, especially with the different cultures. Like you were saying, the Dutch are particularly tall, and then a lot of the South American like native like tribes that were there were incredibly short. So it's like you have whole groups of people that range like on average below 5 feet to people who are like 6 foot plus. And then, you know, you've got these outliers that are 7 foot plus. It's crazy the differentiations that there exist within one species of humanity.
There may also be a God, what is the word I'm looking for here? I'm trying to think. There might be something of a historical basis for the idea that there were tribes all over the Americas who were particularly tall, because we get these stories all over North America, but also there's the Patagonian giants who start off in, you know, I think it was Portuguese storytelling as being, you know, like twice the height of a man. They're 14 to 16 feet tall. It's, you know, a man's scalp comes to their waist. And then I think it's the Spanish get there. And the Spanish are like, they're pretty tall. I'd say like 10, 12 feet maybe. The Dutch get there, and the Dutch are like, oh, yeah, these are very tall people. Like, and they say, you know, but I'd say, you know, probably like 8 to 10 feet. And then an English guy gets here, and he was like, I came expecting giants, and these are simply 7 foot tall people.
Yeah.
Like, what gives? You know, it gets,
well, when you're 4 foot tall, it's like, oh my God, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, you kind of, as you go down the list, you see that, like, yeah, but even, like, the spot where it stops going down, is an English guy saying about 7 feet. And then that's kind of where it sticks. Nobody comes along 100 years later and goes, these guys are 5'8". Like, it stops around 7 foot.
Yeah.
And you're like,
short kings rise up.
You got to wonder, though. You got to wonder, like, is the reason there are all these stories all over North America of things like Bigfoot because for some reason there are small isolated genetic groupings that are particularly tall? What's most fascinating about it to me, though, is they're always in the mountains. Every single time they live in the mountains. Whether it's the Tsul'kalu, who is a specific creature, but then there's also the Tsul'kalil or the Sulilkalu, something like that. I can't remember the exact terminology. That are people like the Tsul'kalu, who are specifically very tall, a little hairy, and they have slanted eyes. And then you've got these the Santics. They're 7 feet tall. They live off in the mountains. You have I'm trying to think the giants, the Numuzoho character in the Site Ka story. Which obviously is like there's a lot to get into there. But you know, these guys they seem to come out of the mountains. Like every single time there's mountains in Native American legends, or anytime there's giants, they almost always seem to come from the mountains.
Now, this is a question I have for both of you related to that. You know, from the biological standpoint of just kind of environmental factors, I think one of us froze again, so I'm going to wait till you're back.
Lost him again.
Yep.
Yeah.
You back now?
All set.
Cool. All right. So yeah. So my question's kind of for both of you about the mountains thing. So from a biological kind of environmental standpoint, for, you know, an organism living up there, especially of this size, and then from kind of like a, you know, just like a general anthropological and historical context, you know, maybe there's a cultural element to it. What are some ideas as to why anyone, like a specific tribe, would live up in the mountains to begin with? Because when you think about the majority of human history, we have centered around bodies of water in the lowlands, in valleys, where there was fertile ground, where there was, you know, reliable sources of water, all this stuff. Living up in the mountains and caves goes against every natural inclination that we as humanity have seemed to have had. What do we think might be some theoretical possibilities as to why people, or these people, would have gone and lived up there?
I have a few thoughts, but I want to hear your take first.
Okay, so I mean, if you take what humans are and potentially where it's said that we evolved from, it's a very warm area, you know. So it's kind of like it's like take a cat, right? Cats enjoy the warmth. While there are cats that live in colder climates, cats like warm. It's just how it is, and they're basically adapted and evolved to seek warmth out as opposed to just being cold. Humans are kind of, I think, a similar thing. Like we enjoy water because of the ability to fish. We enjoy the climate. We enjoy the weather. We enjoy like it. There's a lot of things. I mean, even going out to a beach and just sitting there, it's like going out into the woods and hearing birds chirp. It has a calming effect for a lot of people. So it's intrinsically in us to seek out water. And I mean, water is useful for a myriad of things like travel, like I said, food, commerce, basically everything that you need, you can kind of get from water and stay on land. And not to mention, you need water. Like you straight need water. And if you go near water, even if it's salt water, if you go inland, obviously you're probably going to find some more water in there. As far as an animal choosing the mountains, well, it's not really a human choosing it. It's a different animal choosing it, right? Like you take mountain goats. Mountain goats are adapted to hunt, or not hunt, excuse me. There's things adapted to hunt, mountain goats in the mountains, but they live in the mountains because that's how they're adapted to live. And why did they choose to live in a mountain? It's just an animal comes across it and they stay there long enough and they adapt through the successive generations that they have. But one of the things I do want to point out, though, is mountains have always been like microclimates. They're typically cooler, depending on which side of the mountain. Like, for instance, if it's if you're in a rain shadow mountain, it's going to be drier. But if you're not in the rain shadow of like the mountain and you're basically the first set of mountains where all the moisture comes, you're going to get a lot of water. So there's a rule. It is, I believe, let's see, I pulled it up actually. Bergman's rule. And basically in colder climates, which if you're dealing with moisture and you're dealing with snow and you're dealing with being higher altitudes, Bergman's rule basically states that the reason animals are larger is because it helps them retain heat. So you get polar bears, for instance. Polar bears are massive. The largest one that they ever found and killed was 12 feet tall. And it's way bigger than black bears, and it's still bigger than brown bears. And it's because it's a colder climate, even though there's not a lot of food up there for them to eat. They still live up there and they're gigantic. And it's the same thing with deep sea. Yeah.
So I think what you just said actually supports what I'm about to say. So I'm glad for this. Because if you look at it historically, when do people tend to go into the mountains? Humans, because obviously humans are not adapted to the mountains, where we are not hairy for the most part. Even the most cold weather adapted people in the world, who are Northern Europeans and people who live in Siberia, so Northern Asians. Those two groups, and that I'm going to include Inuits in that as well. Those three groups, I guess, are the best adapted to cold weather, high elevations. They're also, in two of those cases, some of the least hairy people on Earth. Native Americans and Asians and Inuit are far less hairy than Europeans are. Europeans, for some reason, seem to have dealt with the cold by becoming a little hairier. We also developed blue eyes and part of the reason that it's believed that happened is because it is colder more of the year. It is darker more of the year. So it helps us to deal with things like low light environments. It helps us to not go sunblind. And I believe there's even some studies that have suggested blue eyes and green eyes help with seasonal depression. So, like, people who have blue and green eyes are less susceptible to seasonal depression, according to a couple of things I've read. Amanda, don't worry, they can't be heard through the microphone. Oh, really? Not nearly as badly as before, no. Yeah, I know. I hear him. I saw your text. So the reason I say that I kind of go into that is if you look at why people historically have gone into the mountains, it's usually to escape something. It is, we can look at their examples of armies that have lost battles and retreated into the mountains because you can't follow them there, because resources are scarce, because it is hard to traverse, because you need warmer clothing. So I would wonder, to a certain extent, if this is a kind of defense mechanism. And if you look at what happened with Neanderthals, well, Neanderthals were smaller than us. We interbred with them, and they were absorbed. So I do wonder, if, say, there is a species that is larger, maybe a species that is dangerous to us, one reason that it could end up in the mountains is if, as humans populated and became more and more common, a species that is, smaller scale, that maybe hasn't figured out agriculture yet and can't compete in numbers, might go where humans don't. So if you were to have a, human adjacent species, another hominid that had survived in a place like this that was larger, but because of that needs more calories, doesn't have agriculture, has to remain in small family units. You're not going to get past the clan phase. One reason they would end up in the mountains historically would be to escape the more populous and hostile group. So that could be one reason they'd end up in the mountains, which could lead to things like the hairiest members of the society surviving, the most stocky, the ones that are best equipped for those conditions. So I would, I think to that end, if you were going to have Bigfoot, Sasquatch, something of that sort that's real, I think it would be something that evolved alongside humans. Maybe got over in North America 100,000 years ago, and then when humans arrived, because they hadn't figured out, obviously we hadn't figured out agriculture when we got here, but maybe because we don't need quite as much food, we can have larger populations in smaller areas. So I would wonder, is it possible? In my opinion, looking at it, I think the most likely outcome there would be you have Sasquatch, Homo sapiens Sasquatchensis, and that comes over the ice bridge or land bridge long before we do. But they're so big that they need more food. But that's not a problem because they're not really competing with any other hominids. Humans get here, suddenly they have to compete. They go to the mountains where we're not going to survive as much, where food's more scarce, but they don't need quite as many individuals. That would be my thinking. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, it would have to be then, I feel like, is it would have to be like either a form of before Neanderthal or maybe an offshoot that we hadn't even really seen before that went over to Asia. Because once you get to the Middle East, it's like, all right, which way Neanderthal, man, left, exactly. Forward, or right? So I mean, it makes sense that some would be like, I'm gonna go right and just see what's over there. Yeah. And so they do, and maybe they just kind of kept walking and crossed a land bridge that happened to be there around this time as things got colder. And through the successive generations, it would be interesting that you bring up that they are a more reclusive species that only sticks to family units, because that's actually kind of what was the undoing of Neanderthal. Neanderthal, they pretty much, there was intermingling amongst them, but the reason humans were able to kind of outcompete and end up basically breeding with them to the point that there were no more Neanderthals left is because there would be like 6 Neanderthals, right? And you would have maybe the 2 parents, the brother of one of them, and then like a couple of offspring, and that would pretty much be it, right? That would be the whole group. And then you would have a group of like 50 to 100 Homo sapiens move into an area, and they're like running across these things. They're like, well, they kind of look like us. And, hopefully we had figured out beer by then. So, you drinking up beer, Neanderthal girls start looking pretty good. So that's when everything kind of just starts happening. So if that were to be the case, you would still have that small kind of family unit moving across Asia and then into North America. But again, the only thing that would really make sense as far as like, because Neanderthal was not ironically very tall. They were like, compared to humans, I think they were
ranged. I think their upper limit was like 5'8".
Yeah, like they're not very tall, but they would have to move to the mountains, and it would have to be exceptionally cold, and this would have to be like, they would almost have to regress in a way, because we know Neanderthal was very intelligent. They had tools. They had the ability to cover themselves in furs and do all these things.
Right.
So for the cold to actually affect them in a way where, Bergman's law would come into play, that would mean, or Bergman's rule, excuse me, that would mean that like they would have to like regress to the point where they forgot how to make tools, they forgot how to wear furs, and their bodies had to literally just adapt to the fact that it was so cold. But then to that point, it's like, okay, well, if there's not really many of them, a lot of them are going to have to die in order for them to adapt.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Yeah.
So I guess last question I would have before we move over to the Q&A section then, this is one thing that I came up against in my research on it is, what is the minimum population here for something to survive, for a species to survive?
Well, I think the biggest problem you're going to run into is, as you just stated a second ago, Neanderthal may have been on their way out, and it's because of their kind of decreased social ability. So they were starting to thin out naturally anyways, and the problem is it's kind of an exponential problem because as they thin out, they're already less social, so they find each other less and less and less and less, and it becomes a bigger and bigger issue. What was it? Humans, they hypothesized, may have almost went extinct a while back.
Yeah, I keep seeing this thing that people say there was a bottleneck where there were like only 1,000 Homo sapiens at one point, and I've yet to see a scientific study confirming that. But I definitely seen that the number was like small.
Yeah,
not that small, but
there were a lot. And again, there's never been a lot of us until very recently.
Yeah, I think we hit 1 billion around the time of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, and now we're at 8.8.
Yeah.
Now it's starting to kind of level off a little bit because everybody's just like, I don't really know, like having kids and everything in this economy.
Exactly.
But
we've got certain parts of the world have gotten to the point of, it's too expensive to have kids, while other parts of the world are it's too expensive to not have kids. Like,
yeah, there you go.
So we only enjoyed a little bit of time in that nice middle ground.
Yeah. Oh my God, dude. Tell me about it. It's nice being in the middle ground for a little bit, but
yeah,
kids eventually, they'll be pretty cool. But I think to answer your question, yeah, exactly. They'll probably be a bunch of smart asses too. Exactly. So that's going to be the unfortunate part.
I was going to say a lot of little me's running around. I don't even know if I can handle that.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be that much smaller.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There you go. Man, dude. Yeah. I forgot where I was.
We were talking about population size that would be required.
Population size. Okay, so the biggest issue I would see is simply diversity. How are you going to introduce new genes so that there's not incest happening? And this is coming off of a species that was already having issues maintaining their population numbers because they were not as social. You would need a big push out of Asia with a Neanderthal-esque population that somehow forgot how to use tools, but somehow survived getting over here, and then just was like, I don't want to wear clothes anymore or any furs,
right?
And I don't care about the cold. You're talking about several, probably 1,000 that would be needed, and then with a population of that size in an area, it's interesting to me that there's still there's Bigfoot everywhere, but nobody can really identify where it is or catch any sights of it. And it's an animal at the end of the day, and sometimes animals are difficult to find. But if you had the population size necessary to sustain these things, we would have most definitely found it by now.
Gotcha. All right.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's all good info.
Cool.
Yeah,
that was great.
Thank you.
Love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
At this point, I mean, I know the audience has questions.
Yeah, so we've got some super chats. Do we want to say the cutoff tonight would be like 8:15-ish for new chats to come in? All right, cool. So, ladies and gentlemen who are watching, so that you know, we are going to be going into question time now from what 8:03 is right now to about 8:30. We will stop reading any super chats that are from after 8:15 just in order to be able to finish by 8:30, because when we have tried to get every super chat in the past, they just kept coming in, and we appreciate it, but we also need sleep.
We are now victims of our own success.
We are. And if we get to the point where we read all of the 8:15 super chats, we'll read some of the regular chats in there, just because we try not to be exclusive about it. It's just when people pay for it, we want to give them priority because they've earned it.
Yep.
So,
all right.
Starting off with Kellen, the official dater for $5.56. Love the specificity. Saying everyone should own nods for ... reasons.
Exactly. Reasons. Also, I love that YouTube has introduced a feature where you can now like super chats.
Yeah.
Because that could help us organize this even better. If you see a question you really want answered, like it, and then we can sort by what's got the most likes.
Yeah, 100%. And that one's got 5, so apparently we have a lot of people who appreciate that in here.
A lot of people appreciate Kellen.
I would say so. We do, that's for sure. Miss Maury for $5 says, after some of the things I've seen in this chat, the naudience is not a bad way to describe us.
Naudience?
Y'all need Jesus, LOL, myself included.
Yeah. Yeah, our chat does need Jesus.
Yep.
Chat needs so much Jesus.
Yeah, go check out the most recent Weird Bible episode. I think y'all would be very appreciative of it.
Also, please go bug Isaiah about Thursday.
Yeah, is that this Thursday?
Yeah.
All right, good to know. Jacket became a new member. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Kellen again for $2 saying, my brother's that new logo is sick AF.
Yeah, where'd that come from? Yeah. I've never seen that before.
So, don't hate me, but I was messing around with, what's the one in Discord?
Midjourney?
Yeah, I was messing around with Midjourney. I was looking for our regular logo, but it's on an external hard drive, and I don't have any of them with me. So that was the best thing I could think of to throw in a black corner.
Okay.
So
I'll make some actual designs for it for the future.
Fair. Yeah, no, that was on me again.
It's all good.
Timing. Sorry, fellas. And then All Dragons Are Sluts for $20. Thank you so much. Made a cup of coffee using the Lure Lodge coffee, and my son asked me if I was drinking my Wendigo juice. It shall be known as Wendigo juice henceforth, and honestly, I can't argue with that, but I also don't know how to feel about it.
Wendigo juice. That sounds pretty messed up. That's on the internet somewhere.
I have no response to that. I have no response to that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's all I can say.
Incredible. Next up is Equus Heart for $5 saying, have you guys ever thought about looking into the Superstition Mountains in Arizona? We have.
Yes, it's on a list. We will get there at some point. I need to find like a good source of information on it because there's not a ton out there. Like there's a lot there's a lot of the same kind of general vague stuff. And it might just be that there's not much that happened there. But from what I understand, the leading theory on it is that the idea of there being a gold mine was invented to explain where a guy got this cache of gold, because what he actually did was rob somebody. So I guess that's what I got to figure out is
not
interesting.
Well, I mean, it's pretty smart. If we're talking like 1800s, you show up in town with a huge sack of gold and everybody's like, where'd you get that? And you're like, oh, there's a mine in the mountains. You just haven't seen it yet.
You wouldn't know where it is.
What are you trying
you
to
haven't heard about it.
I'm trying to scroll through the chat, but it keeps minimizing my tabs.
Weird. All right.
All right, the next one was from Cody Bassett for $9.99, saying, hi guys, love what you do. Ever consider something like Wolfman syndrome becoming prolific in a subset of early hominid, thus causing a divergent group like the Saskats? That's a good one for both of you.
Actually, I mean, I could see it explaining the hairiness.
Yeah.
So could you guys give a little bit of a primer on what Wolfman syndrome is?
You could probably explain that better than I can.
There you go. Okay, so Wolfman syndrome is essentially characterized by having way too much hair in layman's terms. So the thing to remember about our species, we have as much hair as a chimpanzee. It's just very, very fine.
Okay.
So the coarseness of it, as that increases, that gives it the illusion that there's more hair than there actually is, which is why, as you get older, some people get back hair or chest hair, armpit hair, all that stuff. It just gets more coarse.
Right.
So essentially, there's specific areas where it may get coarser. Like you see some people, their entire shoulders are just covered in hair. Mm-hmm. Their back's covered in it. It's like they're wearing a wool sweater, right?
Right.
Well, even though it looks like they're wearing a wool sweater, genetically, not every single hair follicle is going to be that coarse hair. Mm-hmm. However, with Wolfman syndrome, every single hair follicle is that coarse hair. So it's basically just a genetic predisposition. Could that create a subset species that is going to become that? Don't quote me, because this was about 4 or 5 years ago that I covered Wolfman syndrome on a science channel that I used to have. Mm-hmm. But if I remember correctly, it was a massively rare and recessive gene. Mm-hmm. So the likelihood of several different people all getting together who all have this recessive gene to begin with, or even this gene to begin with, but then it's recessive and then not coming across another dominant gene is, I think, kind of very unlikely. Is it possible in the infinite universe for it to happen? Sure, anything's possible, but is it probable?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, the only way I can really think is, aside from just random chance, I mean, maybe if you had, like, somebody with the disorder reproducing with somebody who had the gene for the disorder, and then their kids reproducing with each other might increase the chances. But then you'd also
that
have
would explain
the
why they don't wear clothes.
It would explain why they don't wear clothes and why they stopped using tools.
That would.
Yeah.
Like the IQ regression from inbreeding would actually explain that. It's just, could it happen?
Okay, so I actually do have. Okay, so just to cut in with the Wolfman syndrome, and a small percentage of people with Wolff-Hirschhorn syndrome, the disorder is caused by chromosome 4 becoming a ring chromosome in the remaining cases of Wolff-Hirschhorn syndrome. An affected individual inherits a copy of chromosome 4 with a deleted segment. So it's basically not a recessive gene. So that was I completely misremembered that. Okay. It is a gene error.
How does that change the math then?
Well, it's a gene error. So yes, you can pass along a gene error, but what is the likelihood? I mean, unless Wolfman finds Wolfwoman exceptionally attractive and then they have Wolf Kid, but then Wolf Kid has to go find, when they grow up to Wolfman or woman, find another person who also has that. It's very, very unlikely. Gotcha. I think. Yeah.
Is there any difference in the likelihood as opposed to a recessive gene? Like, are you more likely to pass on a deleted gene?
Well, so that just means your body doesn't actually have it. So it's like when that sperm made connection with the egg, the gene wasn't present. There was a deleted segment that it needed. So there's nothing to pass along. Yeah. It's just gone.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, though. Would that be like, I know on a Punnett square, you're looking more at like a 25% chance. Would this be the kind of thing where there's a 50% chance of inheriting it?
No, there shouldn't be, because you should be getting the gene from the other parent as well.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and then what you're going to pass on is that. Gotcha. So you would basically, it was kind of like a self-correcting type of deal.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but that's like the whole point of sexual reproduction, in the sense, isn't it? Is for the pairings of the genes to essentially, like, not essentially fix each other, but the whole of mixing the two genomes then kind of allows for, in one hand, a diversification of the gene pool, but also at the same time a self-correction per generation, right?
Yeah, because if there's broken genes, or there's issues with like one parent, sometimes those can still crop up, but you have a kind of like a correcting factor there as well. So it makes things a lot better just having two sets of parents.
Yeah.
A set of parents.
But I guess then if Wolfman did find Wolfwoman, would there be a 100% chance of the child inheriting it?
It would make sense.
I mean, as long as, because it's deleted, so there wouldn't be anything to pass along.
At this point, it's just me like gathering info for when we do the video on the science behind Bigfoot.
Yep.
And like, what could be possible? What lengths do I need to go to make this possible?
What's the successful reproductive tribe size for wolf people to perpetually exist?
Yeah. Good Lord.
Interesting questions here at the Lore Lodge. Elena de Howler Werewolf Queen for $9.99 says,
appropriate question. Ask her.
What's that?
Appropriate question. Ask
yes. Her. Yeah, absolutely. Very, very timely. Can't stay long, super chatting and leaving. $10 from last week was in reference to the "is Bigfoot a guy in a suit" question. So you'd have a confirmed human in costume, mom in her werewolf costume. Got it. Okay, so that was going to be the provided reference. Understood. Gotcha. The Castman 777 for $5 says, I saw one of Flatzoid's responses to you. He said that Aquinas is not an authority on the Bible because he was Catholic. I'm not kidding, LOL.
Ooh, boy. This dude is going to get smoked on his own channel.
When are you doing that? Do you know yet?
I haven't decided yet.
Fair enough.
I'm going to answer the email tonight, because if I don't, he'll probably make another video tomorrow about how I'm dodging him, when in reality I'm just a little busy.
A little? My brother in Christ, I don't know if there's been a time in our history where we've been any more busy.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, it's I don't know how much how up you are on religion and the nuances of Catholic and Protestant scripture, but Aquinas is not an authority on the Bible is a hell of a take.
Saying Thomas Aquinas is not an authority on the Bible is like saying Albert Einstein is not an authority on physics.
They would also say that They would also say that Albert Einstein is not an authority on physics.
Well, at least they're consistent.
You got to remember who we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole flat Earth in general, I just, like I said, I don't really understand a lot of why they believe specifically what they believe, usually because it could be disproven through very minimal observations. But hey,
I've chalked it up at this point to it is one of or a combination of factors, those being lack of intelligence, as in they can't understand why they're wrong, like they just cannot comprehend the explanation for why the Earth is round. Then there is ignorance, which is that they don't know the facts, so they can't comprehend it because they don't have the information. And the third is narcissism, and that is, even no matter how many facts they're presented, they have such an ego that they cannot consider that they might be wrong. And then there's the fourth group, which aren't actual flat earthers. They're the people who recognize this is a very easy way of making money. And make flat Earth content.
The grift.
Yeah. The problem is, I guess, it seems like in the last 5 years or so, the grift has crossed over with the true believers, and it seems like now most of the people who make flat Earth content are like they believe in it.
Yeah.
Which is just terrifying. But yeah, I mean, we had people in the comments of our last video where we used math. Like we weren't just saying, well, scientists say this. We were like, well, if you take a circle and you do basic geometry with your circle, here's how you explain why you can't see this. And they're like, but why can't I see Chicago? Like, I'm like, or sorry, why can't I see Chicago? And you're like, well, if you look at the math.
Yeah. And you notice how much of the buildings you're actually seeing.
Like, there's a degree of curvature every 69 or so miles. Chicago, from the point you took the picture, is less than 69 miles away. It should be visible. That's your answer.
Yep.
Like, from a certain height, it should be visible.
For a historian and a filmmaker who haven't had to take a math class since high school based on their degrees, last week was a really difficult week.
Yeah, I had to do a lot of math.
Yeah. I have to go back and watch that, actually.
Yeah, we went through, like, all of the basic explanations for everything, and it wasn't like we were saying this person says this and this person says this, or, like, just throwing it out. I was going through how it works, and we still had people in the comments section like, that's not how it works. And I'm like, can you explain yourself? And they just start insulting you.
My favorite part of the video is easily the bit where a couple other people have commented so far, and it's you saying, the picture shows Manhattan and also Manhattan.
Oh, yeah, there's one that they say this one image shows both Manhattan and Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Or New York City and Philadelphia. And I don't know, how much time you spent in the Northeast, but from the point the picture was taken, Washington's Rock in New Jersey, Philadelphia and New York are almost 180 degrees from one another.
Yeah.
Like if you're standing on Washington Hill and you look at New York, Philadelphia will be behind you. It is not possible to take an image that is not panoramic, that does not that shows both of them.
Yeah.
It's physically impossible. The picture shows northern Manhattan and southern Manhattan.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay, dude. But anyway, we're gonna have plenty of flat Earth discussions coming up. We've got Austin Whitsitt from Whitsitt Gets It scheduled for the 19th of May.
Nice.
And then I'm gonna be going on Flatzoid's Perspective show just for fun.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a drink and enjoy myself.
Yep. I can't wait to watch that unless I'm gonna be here. But
who knows?
We'll find out. Moving on, Zachary Schmidt for $1.99 says, "Damn, learning so much today. So glad to hear it."
I love doing the interdisciplinary shows where we pull somebody on from a totally different field because it just totally expands everything.
Yeah.
Nah, it's fun. It's a good time.
Glad to hear it. Fruit Squisher for $5 says, "Do you think Wendigos can make things that allow for pregnancy? I imagine skinwalkers can. I'm doubtful that the Wendigo has the ability. They don't need to procreate, so it's unlikely."
I mean, the Wendigo is described as suffering from suppuration of the flesh. It describes being gaunt, emaciated, with the stench of rot and death. I have the book in here somewhere. I could probably read
the amount of times I've heard you say the phrase desiccated skin in my life.
It's I think it says its lips, if it has any, are
if it has any. Nice jab.
I'm gonna go ahead and say that the Wendigo probably, even if it had functioning bits, could probably not reproduce. Because like a male one, maybe. A female one, absolutely not.
Well, it's just a... Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, boy, he's frozen again.
We'll let him know when he comes back.
Wrong, and I might be. Wendigos are just humans corrupted by a spirit.
Oh, boy. Well, so, depends who you ask.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's... As with any primarily orally transmitted tradition, there is a large variation to the stories here.
Can I ask that you never say orally transmitted tradition again, please?
Those are the best kinds of traditions.
Sorry for using the correct terminology.
No, we're just going to get yelled at for that.
Like, okay.
Monetization tanked.
Oh, boy. Yeah, anyway. Some of the stories have it that, yes, there is a Wendigo spirit who corrupts people, and that that turns them into something. In other cases, you have that people are not transformed into anything. They just kind of go mad. They have Wendigo psychosis, wherein they believe that they have to eat flesh. So, yes, there's kind of the spiritual Wendigo, which is more of a demonic entity that corrupts people. In some cases, it's even a physical entity in and of itself. But in some versions, it's a demonic entity that corrupts you and causes you to undergo physical transformations as well. In others, it's a demonic entity that corrupts you, but there are no physical changes. You just become emaciated because you're only eating human beings and nothing else. And then you can take it a step further, and there are versions of the Wendigo where it's just a person who committed the act of cannibalism, and now they have the hunger, so to speak.
There you go.
Yeah,
there it is.
All right, well, so it's still human, though, technically.
Yeah, it's still human in all cases.
Yeah.
Same with skinwalkers.
Off.
Yeah, same with skinwalkers, but skinwalkers are, that's witchcraft. That's something where you're not undergoing any sort of physical issues. I also, one thing I've considered is that, if you look at the descriptions of Wendigos, they can match with, in some cases, descriptions of things like syphilis and leprosy. So I have wondered, if you look at when, there were Europeans here as early as 1000 AD, if they were carrying leprosy with them, it's possible that you could end up with that form of leprosy that causes skin and limbs to slough off, that you would end up with that description as a result of a natural phenomenon, if not a spiritual thing.
Is there any correlation between leprosy and syphilis and the consumption of human flesh that we're aware of?
No.
Yeah, I don't think it should cause you to want to eat people.
Yeah, well, in the reverse order of because a lot of these stories occur when pushed to the edge, people consume human flesh, and then supposedly they become, Wendigo or something along those lines. So I wasn't sure if that was.
So not that I can really think of. The one thing that could match in that case would be prion diseases, I think.
Yep.
Which I don't know. Maybe you can explain what prion diseses are better.
Oh, 100%, man. I love prion. Well, no, I don't actually. Yeah. They scare the hell out of me. But, prions, basically, it's a protein complex that it continues to, there's a couple ways they think that it works, because we still don't fully know how it works. It's essentially it's protein. That's all it is.
So it's not bacteria, not virus, not parasite.
And there's no way to really kill it. And the amount of heat you have to apply to it to denature it is absolutely insane. But essentially what happens is when you get prion disease, it goes into your brain, and there are enzymes that are actually going to try to, this is the first thing that it's kind of a newer thought process, that are going to try to correct these proteins. And it ends up breaking the enzyme. And so that enzyme is now broken, or even essentially corrupted at this point, and it goes to other normal functioning prions that are in your body. And then it ends up breaking those proteins and creating more prions that are going to just build up as a plaque in your brain and cause spongification. So one of the One of the scariest things I think about prions in general, just throwing this out there, is you take chronic wasting disease right now. Say a deer drops because of it, decomposes. All the regular proteins get broken down. Prions can be left over. Plants grow underneath it. Plants come up, still have prions on them from chronic wasting disease. Another deer comes along, eats it, now has prion disease.
That is horrifying.
Yeah, and they can last. They don't get broken down by UV radiation. It takes a lot of heat, like fire. And even then, like you can't outcook prions in meat. They will stay in there. You have to literally char to like denature it. So if somebody ate somebody else who had already prion disease and may not even known it, and then this like it passed that way, it's possible, but it would have to be a combination of diseases. Which there were a ton of diseases floating around back then anyway, so it's always possible.
So for like somebody who's a hunter today, and it might be concerned about a deer that may have like had that
You'd know if you shot a deer with prion disease.
No, but I mean, like, how quickly once they have it do they start showing symptoms?
Well, the thing is that currently, at least this was a couple of months ago when I read about this, they haven't said that the prions associated with deer have made the jump to humans.
Okay.
However, mad cow disease exists. So,
yeah, it's that's Creutzfeldt-Jakob, right? Like,
yes, I think is that the genetic one. You can basically have a gene error in your body that creates prions, and then it presents later in life. I think that's Creutzfeldt.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah,
I would not be surprised though if that eventually makes the jump. That to me is way scarier than like anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Creutzfeldt-Jakob, just to clarify, it can be inherited, it can occur spontaneously, and it can be transmitted to others by infected tissue, like during a transplant or eating something contaminated. So yeah, overall, it's pretty bad. Prions, like I said, next to brain-eating amoebas, those are the two things I'm just like, no thanks.
Yeah, that's sweet. New fears being unlocked tonight. Love that. Love that.
There you
for
go.
me.
Needed some existential dread.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we could always use some of that.
So much for wanting to get into hunting.
Well, I mean, have you ever seen a deer with chronic wasting disease?
No.
It's obvious.
It's creepy.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they'll just straight up have like parts missing.
Oh.
Like just flesh hanging off. Yeah, it's almost like if you watch The Last of Us, it's not dissimilar.
Got it.
Like obviously it's not like a fungus that's communicating across a network, but they're not moving around like normal deer. They don't respond to stimuli like normal deer. They're probably going to look really sickly. Like you would not want to eat a deer with prion disease because it just wouldn't have like the meat on it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, chances are, I think you'd know if you shot a deer with prion disease. That said, I don't know.
Well, I mean, part of the issue, I will say, just to interject, is they're finding that for some people who ate the contaminated meat over in the UK, it took 10 years for the disease to actually show up. But once it shows up, I mean, there's nothing. Once you're infected, there's nothing they can do for you, anyways. But once the symptoms start, you have about some people have like 3 months, some people have a year, but all they can really do is just make you comfortable. And even then, it might take a few, like the last couple of months of life, you're not even really there anymore. You're just kind of
a zombie.
Yeah, pretty much. Very sad stuff. So just, God.
Yeah.
Be careful hunting.
Just keep up to date. See, hopefully you're not the first one that it passes to humans with.
Hopefully. I wouldn't want to test that.
I'm feeling so confident right now, guys. Thanks for this. Really, really. Moving on. Joe Crazy for $2 says, "Sup, Papa Roanoke? Did I miss the feet analysis?"
Oh, yeah.
I don't think we analyzed the feet.
I know. Starting with the feet, as per usual. Well, Bigfoot. That's right. We should have talked about his feet.
Yeah,
what do we do?
Obviously. Yeah, that's how we know Bigfoot's not real. He would be making a killing on OnlyFans.
Yeah.
I know. feetfinder.com, right?
Well, yeah.
And the only reason I know that exists is because other people have told me. I'm just throwing that out there.
All right, sure.
You can't. Here's the thing. You already like stuck your foot in the sand with the first statement, but as soon as you start trying to, then it's just like, I'll just give you a shovel.
Just
now.
make it worse.
Yeah, he's got Roanoke gamey, he's got Roanoke tails, he's got Roanoke feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, it all comes together.
You said Roanoke feet. I imagined Hobbit feet for whatever reason, but just on the shores of Roanoke.
Oh boy, that's what really happened to the Lost Colony.
Yep. Now we got to do another Roanoke video. We'll have you on.
There we go.
It was after sailing away to the Undying Lands, they got lost, and Frodo showed up.
Yep.
You know.
No, just started growing hair out of their feet. It's like, ooh, Godspeed.
Tamer Nigel for Canadian $5, I believe, says, "Is Papa Roanoke the true father of Mattis?" ?
No. I don't know that you're even old enough for that.
Oh, I'm very old. I'm 31.
Okay, yeah, I'm 26. Unless you were slanging meat at 5.
Hey, you never know. Actually, that's a pretty screwed up statement. Just for clarity's sake. No. Really got to start thinking about these things.
Man was laying pipe in kindergarten.
Oh, God.
Good God.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, we got to wrap this up soon for our sake. AR became a new member.
Thank you.
Nice. Ryan Whitcup for $5.51. Love the specificity, saying, "If Bigfoot isn't real, how did John Marston talk to him in Red Dead Redemption, the most accurate entertainment franchise in history?"
I mean, well, as we all know, Red Dead Redemption happened.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah. I mean, well, then we know Bigfoot eats babies. So.
Thanks for the spoiler, God.
I just
Game's only been out for, what, 15
like 15 years?
Yeah, I remember playing it on a PlayStation 3 at my friend's house.
Oh,
incredible.
My God, man.
I still never finished that one.
Yeah, I haven't finished 2 either. I might do a playthrough of that on the streaming channel.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Ryan Howe for Canadian $5 says, "Heard estimates that Denisovans may have been bigger than the average modern humans, though should be noted that the Denisovans are only known for their teeth."
Yeah, I would be skeptical about making any conclusions from Denisovans yet.
Yeah.
Maybe once we find a full skeleton, but
fair.
If we find a full skeleton.
Catherine Lopez gave a smiley face for 99 cents.
Thank you.
Thank you. Fruit Squishers back again for $2, saying, "Check out Robert Seffer for early history."
I have checked out Robert Sepper for early history. I did several streams going over his content, and I have seen very few people be more wrong than him.
How?
He's just like Mind Unveiled. It's the same thing. It's the same thing
is this
as Mind
Flat Earth
Unveiled.
stuff again?
What?
Is this Flat Earth stuff again?
No, this is Tartaria.
Oh, got it.
Oh, yeah, he's... Yeah. Also, if you dig into it, it's hilarious. There's like an article about how the guy was ousted by his far-right following because they found out he was an Ashkenazi Jew.
What?
Like, he made a whole bunch of anti-Semitic content and it was then, like, ostracized by his own followers once they found out he was Jewish. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
What was the plan there? Just out of curiosity.
I don't know.
Was he not
one of my favorite things is he refers to himself as an accredited anthropologist all over the place, yet lists no credentials, no accreditations, no anthropology degree, no published anthropological works. And you're like, what do you think accredited anthropologist means, my guy?
Great question.
Like, did you even
accredited?
Like,
hey, he went to DeVry. All right.
I would argue, like, yeah, at least got to have an associate's degree. You know,
yeah.
or you have to have
also anybody went to DeVry. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, man went to Hofstra.
Incredible. Miss Maury's back again for $5, saying, "Just finished spending all day binge listening to Roanoke Gaming while prepping my garden after the winter. Now now I get more Roanoke. What a win!"
Exactly.
Love that.
There you go. Well, thank you for watching.
Absolutely. Kelly, the official data for $20. Thank you, sir. Says, "Thornbury, I said this to Mattis on Friday, but I wanted to thank you for the last few years of content during a difficult time in my life, and I appreciate the work that you have done and the entertainment and distractions. Kellen, you have no idea how much that means to hear. Thank you for your consistent support throughout the show. You've been obviously one of the most consistent and most reliable viewers that we've had. We always enjoy seeing you in the chat here. I know you're on his personal stuff. You're on here all the time.
I tried to buy this man Helldivers, and he refused to allow me to do it.
Yeah, you should let him do it, because then y'all can play together.
He's got it now.
Oh, perfect. Good. But yeah, no, seriously, thank you for sticking around this long. It's always fun to be able to shout your name out in here, so appreciate it. The Brown Yeti for $4.99 says, "What's y'all's opinion on the Albert Ostman Bigfoot story? Glad to see two of my favorite YouTube channels to get together."
I actually don't think I've heard that one.
Albert Ostman.
Yeah, I haven't heard that either.
Albert Ostman. I'm gonna look it up really quick.
Go for it.
Yeah.
In the meantime, that is the last. That's the last one from pre-815.
All right. I gotta look up this Albert Ostman thing really quick. Canadian prospector reported that he was abducted by a Sasquatch and held captive for 6 days. Stated the event took place near Toba Inlet, British Columbia in 1924. He heard stories about the man beasts, but refused to believe them. Picked him up and carried him off while he was in his sleeping bag. Across country for 3 hours, dropped him on a plateau. There was a family of them. He was kept alive. Reported that one was 8 feet tall. Stayed with them for a week. Ate sweet-tasting grass. Albert escaped by making the large male Sasquatch groggy by feeding him some snuff. Didn't tell it for more than 24 years after it happened. And then came forward in 1957, around the time that that Bigfoot was starting to pick up steam in California. Yeah, I can take a look. I mean, I'd have to take a look at the specific details, because here's the thing with a lot of these stories, and I see this with a lot of anything that's even remotely, quote-unquote conspiracy theory oriented. I see a lot of people, and I did the exact same thing. That's how this channel came to be. You'll see a lot of things that, like, on their face are similar. And you start to make connections, and once you've made the connection, you really want to find it. You're convinced it's there. So even though maybe you don't actually find the evidence you're looking for, you continue to push for it and look for it and try and find the right thing. But in my experience, the more you dig into things, often the less related each story will actually be. That, sure, you'll have... it was 7 to 8 feet tall, it was covered in hair, and it had a family. But after that, you'll start to see variations that are contradictory. You're going to start to see things that don't make sense across all of the stories. And what I've been trying to do through this Bigfoot series is kind of go, all right, here's all the stories, here's what they hold in common. Here's the things that appear every single time. Because that's the stuff that you actually want to take a look at. If you go based on just broad comparisons, you're often going to end up with an argument that's untenable. At least in my experience.
That makes sense. Cool.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Well, gentlemen, that's...
I did see there was another $20 one that came in after.
There was, yeah. That was Jack Everfree giving us some information on chronic wasting disease, saying that it can stay hidden for years before symptoms start. In states where chronic wasting disease has been detected, it's recommended to have your meat tested before consumption. I don't think wild cervids will exist in 100 years. And for those of you who didn't know what cervids means, like I didn't and had to look it up, it's just like different forms of deer and such like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sad. I hope that's not the case. And then the woodsman underneath said, "We have sequenced the Denisovian genome from Neanderthal mother and Denisonian father in a Denisoa cave, or
Denisova cave.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we had sequenced the genome. I don't know if we sequenced the entire genome, but I don't know, so I'm going to defer to the commenter. They're probably right if they looked it up. But yeah, I would be curious to see if we can find a full skeleton, because if there's one thing that I think has been really funny to watch, it's the way that our perception of dinosaurs has changed over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys. Some people are truck kids. Some people are train kids. I was a dinosaur kid.
What was your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, Allosaurus, hands down.
See, that's how you know he was a real dinosaur kid, because he said something other than T-Rex and Velociraptor.
I also liked Parasaurolophus, but it was kind of a hard word to say for a 4-year-old.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I was a train kid, if you're not aware. I know chat probably is for the most part.
Wait, what were you? What was your obsession?
I like the Velociraptors.
Okay, so yeah, nice.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to put the smoke out there.
It's all good, man.
But how did we get to dinosaurs? Right. Yeah, but my point in saying that was like, we know that dinosaurs were reptiles, but we also know that birds originated from dinosaurs, or at least that's the way the theory currently holds. For a very long time, we went with dinosaurs reptiles, therefore dinosaurs scaly. That paradigm is changing, and now dinosaurs weren't scaly, they were feathered. So that means kids growing up in the late 2020s, when they go back and watch Disney's Dinosaur, are going to be very confused.
Or Jurassic Park.
Or literally any movie that involves dinosaurs.
Yeah.
People growing up 10, 20 years from now, going back and watching the classics, as you will be very confused as to why we thought dinosaurs didn't have feathers. On top of that, it's been believed generally that dinosaurs roared. They are changing that as well, and it's now believed dinosaurs probably chirped.
Yep.
Like birds. So imagine instead of the
I hate it.
Exactly. It's no longer the T-Rex from Jurassic Park that's huge and scary and terrifying. Now it's a giant pigeon.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll tell you what,
teeth.
It
a
still has the
pigeon.
Teeth, though. Have you heard by chance the there's an audio out there of like they took a 3-dimensional like scan of a T-Rex's like vocal cavity or like nasal cavity or something to try and like emulate what it sounded like.
And it honks.
And it is here's the thing. When you close your eyes and you imagine like 2 eyes 16 feet off the ground in like the dark, and you like listen to that sound and you know like what generally a T-Rex looks like, and you hear that, you're like, oh, this might actually be a lot more terrifying than a roar.
This is worse.
Yeah.
Imagine just a giant Canadian goose coming after you, and that's about what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So thanks for ruining dinosaurs, science. God.
I mean,
I couldn't leave well enough alone.
Yep. Well, now apparently there's possibility that the arms didn't go forward; they actually went backward, like wings.
That's even worse.
Yeah. So instead of the T-Rex arms being out here, they might have like been out by the sides.
Also, I gotta say, I'm like, as we've had this brief conversation, I'm beginning to realize exactly how much of pop culture is going to be totally screwed because of the changes to the dinosaur paradigm.
What do you mean?
Well, think about how many movies have a T-Rex in them.
Yeah, I mean, we
have now ruined Jurassic Park. We have ruined Toy Story. Yep. We have ruined Meet the Robinsons.
Yep, I was just thinking about that one. What's that one with Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly from
Journey to the Center of the Earth? No. That was Brendan Fraser, I think.
Yep. No, this was the comedy one.
Land of the Lost.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep, Land of the Lost. Messed up.
Lost.
Yep.
Also, I mean, what if the reptilians have been feathered this whole time? We've been looking for the wrong things.
Yep.
The birds don't work for the government. The government works for the birds.
They're digging in the wrong place.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Our bird overlords.
Yeah.
It's not lizard people, it's bird people.
Exactly.
Yep.
They're
the ones running the show.
That's the trick.
Why did we ever not put that together? They're the ones, they have the best view of everything. Of course they're running the show. A bird's eye view.
Yep.
We've all been taking it for granted.
That's why the birds want you to think that the earth is flat.
Yeah. 100%.
Round. Yeah. I've lost track of where I am on the conspiracy at this point.
Yeah. We're hitting bedrock.
Yeah, the birds work for the Catholic Church, who works for the Freemasons, who are secretly the Illuminati that are also Jewish.
The birds work for the bourgeoisie.
Like, it's incredible.
Birds are fake.
It's incredible how, I will say, when it comes to like the conspiracy that the Freemasons are behind everything, how just utterly funny it is. Like, just, this is the last thing we'll say before we wrap up the show, but if you look at it, it's, oh, well, the Freemasons, and this is how it always goes. The Freemasons are responsible, but the Freemasons are actually the Illuminati, but the Illuminati are actually the Jesuits, but the Jesuits are actually the Catholic Church, and also simultaneously the Jews. But the Jews aren't the Jews are the Khazars. And what happened to the actual Jews, nobody knows. They're just gone now. And the thing about the Khazars is that, you know, they're basically the Tartarians. There's just like, and of course, you know, if you look at it, you can't be Catholic and a Freemason. You obviously can't be Catholic and Jewish. You can't be Jewish and a Jesuit, and the Catholics didn't like the Jesuits, even though the Jesuits were Catholic. Like, it's if you look at this, it's all so jumbled, and it only makes sense if you know absolutely nothing about any of these groups.
Yeah, but where do the Satanists fit in?
Well, back in the 60s, this guy named Anton LaVey decided that, I guess Black Sabbath wasn't edgy enough. And he needed to steal everybody else's symbols and make up a weenie version of, like, ancient Luciferianism.
So can we just confirm for everybody who's watching that that's not you doing a bit? That's from actual research you've done?
Yeah, no, Anton LaVey was just a weenie who kept stealing everybody else's symbols. Like, think if Aleister Crowley was just, like, a weird dude in the 60s instead of a weird dude in the 1860s. Yeah. If you watch Anton LaVey on TV, the guy, like, wears a cape. He must have been. I'm almost positive he was trolling. I have a copy of the Satanic Rituals over on the shelf.
Yeah.
Just because I was curious.
He was just doing it for the bit.
And it's you read it and you're like, oh, this is just somebody ripping off Crowley, and then instead of making it like hermetics, and general occultism, decided to just say it's all Satanism. I feel like he must have looked around and seen, like, the burgeoning satanic panic and gone, oh, I'm going to do a real gamer move here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure his entire thing was making a mockery of religion. I don't think he was an actual Satanist.
Yeah, you just think he was an anti-establishmentarianism, I guess?
Were you going for anti-disestablishmentarianism?
See, I wanted to say anti-establishmentism.
What a word.
But, like, because I'm so familiar with you guys saying anti-disestablishmentarianism from just that word, it automatically took over.
That's fair.
It's like it was like two waves hitting the shoreline, and the back one was faster and just decided to come over the top.
Got it. All right. Well, now that we're thoroughly off the rails.
Yeah, I'm amazed anybody's still watching this.
Seems like a good time to do the outro. Would you like to tell the people where they can find you?
Yeah, so I have my main channel, which supposedly there's a lot of people on Roanoke Tales who don't actually know that. It's Roanoke Gaming. That's pretty much where I talk about, like, the science and video games and movies and all that stuff. Roanoke Tales, obviously, is the secondary channel where it's cryptids and, like, cold cases and pretty much everything else under the sun. So that's where I'm at if you guys are interested in watching.
All right. Sweet. And obviously, we're here.
Yeah.
In the lodge. Yeah. Or if you, I don't know, can you give them the wide angle?
Oh, we're on the wide angle.
Can they see the Mojo Dojo Casa Lodge?
They can. They should be able to.
All right.
You guys give them the wider angle.
Yeah. Exactly. The widest angle.
The Moto angle.
Oh, boy. I like them big. All right. So, cool. Well,
anyway,
everyone, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. I actually, I'm glad we did this because there were some things I was genuinely curious about when it came to the biology angle of things.
Do we have anything coming up that we want to let people know about?
Is there anything on your mind?
Well, Weird Bible's coming up again soon.
Should be on Thursday.
Ideally.
Should be. Hopefully.
What's this week videos?
This week's video is going to be on, it's going to be kind of a hybrid. It's going to be on a possible survivor of the smiley face killers, if they exist. And also kind of a midpoint, like, summarization of where we are with the smiley face killers investigation. Do we think this is a real thing? Do we think that this is kind of just people connecting cases that aren't actually connected? Is there a mix of both? So that's going to be part of this video as well. And then the following Friday, I'm looking at doing Freemasonry.
There we go. We're all caught up.
There you go.
Yeah. And your personal streams.
Oh, yeah, of course. My personal channel where you can catch me Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday nights, as long as there is not an extenuating circumstance of some kind. And those are usually from 6 to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, and from 6 to 9 on Fridays.
Nice.
And on Fridays, we drink. Every time I die.
Absolutely.
In Helldivers.
Oh, that's a big budget.
We've been calling it Hell Drinkers.
Yeah, that's
drinking and diving.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good drinking stuff. And diving.
Drinking and diving. Yeah. You been playing any Helldivers?
I have, actually. Yeah, I need to cover the automatons and how they're created at some point here.
Ooh, nice. Let me know when you do, because I will do a reaction stream to that. That would be fun.
There you go. Sounds good, man.
All right.
Nice.
Well, thank you, my friend, for being on with us. And I think we'll take it into the back room now. Take it into the green room.
Excellent. Good night, everybody.
Night, guys.